Welcome, everyone. I'm Dr. Joshua Scott, the Director of Events and Technology for the Catholic Biblical Association. I have the privilege of interviewing Dr. Aleksander Krogevoll today as a part of CBA's author interview series. More information about the series is available on our website, catholicbiblical.org. Dr. Krogevoll is Associate Professor of Religion, Worldviews, and Ethics at Volda University College in Norway. He holds a PhD in theology from the University of St. Michael's College, University of Toronto, with a research focus on the Old Testament Hebrew Bible. His work centers on Israelite religion, divine epithets, and the origins of the God of Israel, themes developed in his monograph, I Appeared as El Shaddai, tracing the origins of the God of Israel, which is the subject of our interview this morning. Welcome, Aleksander.
Thank you.
To begin, tell us, what is the central theme of the book?
The book is centered around the worship of El and Yahweh in ancient Israelite religion. I do this by focusing on the relationship between El Shaddai and Yahweh. El Shaddai is the only God that is explicitly equated with Yahweh in the Hebrew Bible, and my book is trying to say something about why that might be. I do this by examining the proposed etymologies for Shaddai and explore how the divine name was introduced into Hebrew. I argue that the original etymology of Shaddai is deriving from Akkadian Shaddu, meaning mountain. This was a common epithet for other gods like Enlil and Dagon, and I propose that the epithet was borrowed from one deity to another before it ended up with the Canaanite god El, and that El was at one point understood as El of the mountain. I also go through the so-called Midianite Canaanite hypothesis, which argues that Yahweh originated south of Canaan, uh, based on biblical and extra-biblical evidence. I also examine early characteristics for Yahweh, including presenting Yahweh as a mountain god, as the one of Sinai. And on this basis, I propose that Yahweh and El were partially equated due to their shared natures as mountain gods. And Yahweh inherits the epithet Shaddai as the one of the mountain.
Excellent. I deeply appreciate the philological and epistemological connections you're making here. You alluded to this in your first response, but could you say, how does the book reflect on the history of scholarship in the respective field?
Yeah, I build on the work of so many great scholars. Actually, there are few names, divine names, that have stirred more scholarly discussions than Shaddai. So I go by all the way back to the first connection between Shaddai and Shaddu in the 1880s. And this etymology has been supported by many scholars since then, such as Albright and Cross. But in my book, I offer an extensive review of all the proposed etymologies for Shaddai, including understanding Shaddai as the one of the mountain, as Almighty, as a destroyer, as the breasted one, as a helper, as a demon, as the one of the field, as the one who causes to love, and as a rainmaker. I also challenge a traditional view that the priestly source invented or that invented Shaddai, or that the priestly source was the only source that used El Shaddai. Instead, I argue that Shaddai has an older religio-historical background. I also review the Midianite Canaanite hypothesis, which has become the leading hypothesis for the origin of Yahweh. So the name Yahweh doesn't appear in any West Semitic cultural remains until the 9th or 8th century BCE in the Mesha Stele or at Tel Dan. And because of this, scholars have been looking elsewhere for the origin of Yahweh. And this has led to the Midianite Canaanite hypothesis. So I offer a summary of this hypothesis. And I also connect Yahweh's origins and Yahweh's nature as mountain god to the worship of El and Shaddai, and therefore I connect two areas of scholarship in ancient Israelite religion that often have been treated separately.
The book sounds like a wealth of knowledge and well researched. How would the book be helpful to religious leaders or academics in the classroom?
Yeah, I hope that it will be helpful. For example, the question of who God is, that's an age-old question. And so in a religious context, it might be helpful to make sense of some of the different depictions of God in the Bible and also make sense of some of the different motifs in the Bible that might be foreign to us, such as why is God connected to mountains? Why does God reveal himself on a mountain? And why do the biblical authors describe God uh, as my rock and stuff like that? I also hope that my review of the proposed etymologies and the summary of the Midianite Canaanite hypothesis can be a helpful starting point for academics and students as they explore ancient Israelite religion. And I hope that it can be an interesting study in exploring how biblical authors adapted motifs and imagery from the ancient Near East and used this to shape their own unique theology. As I explore where some of these concepts and divine titles come from.
That's fantastic. This volume sounds exciting and will certainly advance our understanding of ancient Israelite religion. Thank you, Alex, for your time today and sharing more about your recent publication. I appeared as El Shaddai, tracing the origins of the God of Israel, now available from Vanderhoek and Ruprecht. Thank you.
Thank you.